Authority meeting of April 26th. The time is now 6:02 p.m. and we are calling this meeting to order. And we'll start with the flag salute. If I could have the virtual flag and everyone could stand. There's a good flag. Who's that?
That's my t-shirt.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, if everybody could place their hand over the heart. And Special Housing Authority meeting of April 26th.
To the flag.
The time is
the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Special Housing Authority meeting of April 26, 2021. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920 and the orders of the Ventura County Public Health Officer issued March 20th, 2020, Stay Well at Home order. Council chambers have been closed to the public, and Housing Authority board members and staff are participating remotely to help play our part in minimizing the spread of COVID-19. The public was informed in advance of this meeting how to submit all public comments to our authority clerk. The authority clerk has compiled all submissions, and those received prior to the 5 p.m. deadline today were forwarded to the entire Housing Authority board for review prior to the meeting. They will also be read into and part of the official meeting record. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll?
Member Brown?
Here.
Member Hernandez?
Here.
Member Martinez?
Present.
Member Perez?
Here.
Vice Chair Rollins?
Here.
And Chair Gama?
Here. Thank
Everybody's present.
Okay, we have an agenda and looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rollins. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chair, or excuse me, what are we called in this? Director? Member. All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Rollins?
Here.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Brown?
Here. Yes.
Member Martinez?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
And Chair Gama?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any general public comments?
No, sir. There were no general public comments and no comments received for any agenda items tonight.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to presentations. And it's my understanding that Director Gabby Basul will be making a housing projects report.
Good evening, Chair Gama, Vice Chair Rollins, and member of the board and staff. Christy, can you make me the presenter, please?
I can. Give me just one moment. You should be co-host now, Gabby.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this evening, I'm going to give you a short overview of our housing projects report. And what I'm going to be talking about this evening consists of the 30-unit scattered site at Willowbrook. And if you see with my cursor, you can see 16 buildings in this area here, which is in the East Port Hueneme area, right across from Miranda Park. So I'm going to be talking about this area here, along with 157 East Scott Street, which is our Mar Vista Senior Apartments. So if, for those of you who have been in the have been here for a while, back in 2019, the Housing Authority came to the board and requested permission to enter into what we call a CHAP. Basically what it is authorizing the Housing Authority to request from HUD authorization to convert its public housing properties to RAD, which stands for Rental Assistance Demonstration. That happened in early 2019. By mid 2019, the Housing Authority received a commitment from HUD to allow us to do this. By late 2019, the PHA issued an RFP for a need assessment and an energy audit, which is something that is required by HUD. During that time also, we had the departure of the executive director at the end of 2019, and the RFP was never awarded, although we did receive RFPs back. And then fast forward to March 2020, we all know what happened with COVID. We went into kind of a lockdown where everything kind of stopped, and this further delayed the need assessment and the energy audit. So the reason this was delayed because the need assessment required the vendor to go into the units and to enter each and every one unit of the 90 units that the Housing Authority. And as you can imagine, no vendor at that time was going to be entering any homes. Since then, HUD has now released other programs and options for the Housing Authority, which appear to be more promising. So what has happened now is the Housing Authority is now looking at whether or not to continue with the CHAP, which is the commitment to enter into a housing assistance payments, or go to another platform. So this next slide is going to be something that our consultants put together for us. The scenario one that you see up here on the screen, this is what we presented to the council back in 2019. We went to the council and said that we wanted to convert our public housing units to RAD. What that meant and what that program is basically Section 8 platform. And all these programs that I'm going to be talking about are Section 8 platforms, but they're all very different. So with RAD, what RAD would allow the Housing Authority to do would be to demolish its Willowbrook units, which is the 30 scattered sites, and rebuild. It was estimated at that time that the Housing Authority would net an operating income of $157,000 a year. Since then, HUD has also released what we call a streamlined voluntary conversion for small housing authorities, which basically said a project that really doesn't need a lot of renovations, sort of like our Mar Vista apartment complex, you can do what they call a 50-50. You can do 40 units of RAD, which would consist of actually demolishing the Willowbrook complex, and continue to do 50 units of streamlined voluntary conversion. Once our consultants came back with those numbers, it actually has a net operating income of $716,000. So you can see the difference of the amount of the net operating income between if we continue with RAD or we decide to go 50-50 with RAD and streamline voluntary conversion. Another program that HUD came out with during the COVID crisis was what they call TPV, which is a tenant protected voucher, meaning that every single resident of public housing would receive a Section 8 voucher, and HUD would go ahead and pay the Housing Authority market rate for these units. Our consultant came back and said that if the housing authority decided to go this route, it would net an operating income of $956,000 a year. So as you can see, the housing authority has these three options. All three options have its pros and cons, which I'm going to go over now. So with the RAD conversion, there is sufficient income just to go ahead and do a straight conversion. The problem with that can be that we might have a net operating income within the 10 years after we convert to RAD. So I think at this point, staff is recommending that we go ahead and release ourselves from the CHAP that HUD has authorized us to do. If we were to go half with the RAD conversion and the tenant protective vouchers, obviously we would need to do some renovations to these units. And the reason we would need to do renovation to the units is because HUD is going to be paying us market value for these units. So we need to show HUD that these units are worth every penny that they give us. That is if we go and say, let's do half RAD and half with the tenant protected vouchers. Our other option is just to say, okay, we're not going to demolish for now. We're not going to do tenant protective vouchers, but we're going to do a streamlined conversion, which basically, again, is going straight into the Section 8 platform. But there's negativity to this. Of course, this is the one that gives us almost $1 million of net operating at the end of the year, but it is also probably the one that is going to give us more vacancies. And when I say that is because the tenant protective vouchers would be allowed for tenants if they find a home anywhere else within the United States, they can leave. So that means staff would continuously have turnover after turnover. So that is the one downside to the tenant protective vouchers. So this was just a really quick recap of what staff has been working on, and we will be coming back to the board with our recommendation in the near future, which is probably going to be within the next few months. And with that, I am available to answer any questions that you may have.
Gabby, can you go back to the second to the last slide, please?
Yes.
Yes, this one. And I just wanted to understand what the definition of net operating income is, because clearly if we're going to solely make our decision based upon net operating income, it's pretty clear which one would probably win. However, is the goal to provide as much public housing as we can, or to net the most operating income possible? I'm kind of confused.
It is a bit of both. So with scenario 2, we can accomplish both. We can accomplish to demolish Willowbrook, which is about 2 acres of land, which we have 30 units in. Depending on what the board wants as far as the vision for this 2-acre property, we can probably put up to 60 units there, depending on how dense you want this area. Meaning that net operating income would be a lot higher. Remember, these numbers are based on the 90 units and not adding any additional public housing to our portfolio. The other thing that housing authorities have done is they've left their public housing the way it is, have taken the net operating income and have invested in buying properties throughout their community and renting those out to Section 8. So that is scenario 2. Obviously, scenario 3, which generates the most income at $956,000, does not include the demolition for Willowbrook. For Mar Vista, if you're familiar with the complex, there is not much we can do there besides renovating, putting new flooring, new kitchens, new windows, which we are bringing in the windows, but there is not much we can do there. Where we're looking really at our options is going to be with the family complex at Willowbrook.
Thank you. I can only speak for myself. Very complicated, difficult to understand. Are there any other questions for, yes, I see Member Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Gama or Chairman Gama. Ms. Masua, thank you so much for your presentation. I appreciate the different scenarios and the way you've laid out the options. I too wanted to know, what do you mean by net operating income? And I want to know where does the gross income come from and what's included in the expenses, especially since you said the expenses did not include the demolition of Willowbrook.
That is correct. So the net operating income is the surplus money that we should have at the end of the fiscal year after all our expenses have been paid. Expenses include our audit, bookkeeping, our office supplies, payroll, our maintenance, our insurance, our utility costs, and we also pay property tax to the county and what we call a pilot. And additional expenses can be, resident initiatives and stuff like that. So these numbers here come from our consultant after they looked at our books for the 2018 fiscal year, 17-18 fiscal year.
Okay.
From their analysis, this is what they're saying our net operating income should be.
And your net operating income is used for what?
It's used for reserves. It is really going to be up to the board to decide how to use these reserves. We can, staff will come back with options. You can decide, the housing authority, we need to start demolishing Willowbrook slowly, save our reserves when we have enough money to start demolishing units one by one.
Okay, so it's just odd that you would that the consultants or maybe it's a HUD requirement that you would even call this net operating income, because it sounds like this is your budget. Your net operating income is budget, when in fact it's surplus money that we have the authority to decide how it's going to be used.
Correct.
So I think that's a little confusing. Do we know how much the demolition is for Willowbrook?
No, we do not. We haven't gotten that far. What we're going to be doing next is the need assessment, where the consultant is going to come back in as of June 1st, has authorized their vendors to continue to go into these units again, obviously taking COVID precautions. So we are going to be awarding the RFP here within the next few weeks to a vendor, and they will come back with a need assessment as far as what their recommendation is that we do to these units. But to answer your question, Member Hernandez, our gross income is going to be our budget.
Okay. And the other question I had was, well, I guess I'll wait. You're asking us to choose from one of these three scenarios. Is that correct?
No, I'm just giving you an overview. We are going to come back with a more detailed analysis and final numbers and a recommendation.
Okay, so this is a report. You're not asking for any action from us.
Just a report. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of what you're going to be seeing later on within the next few months, to give you time to kind of ask questions. And if you feel like you need to walk the properties, we can do that too.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Gama, you're muted.
I was muted, yes. Co-Chair Rollins, you have the floor, but we lost him.
Okay, can you hear me?
We just can't see you.
Yeah, I can't see me either. I just see the little screen, the public housing screen in front of me.
Okay.
Thank you for the report, Ms. Basua. On scenario 3, the drawback that you were saying is that we might have to continually look for new tenants. Is that one of the drawbacks that you were mentioning?
Yes, that is the biggest drawback with going to scenario 3.
Now, how would the turnover, assuming that the places were fixed up and assuming they were nicely done and assuming that there's a limited amount of low-cost housing throughout the county, how might you see the turnover being more than normal or right now? I mean, it would seem that, you know, if you went into the house and it was a nicely done, nicely renovated house, why would I want to move as a family?
That is a great question and a great point, Vice Chair Rollins. That is the purpose of this. The purpose is to create a nice environment, kind of like luxury housing without it kind of being, you know, so luxurious, but to entice the tenants to stay. And that's why we're talking about having net operating income in order to continue to maintain these units at a top level. So if we're able to accomplish that, our turnover should be low.
Okay, and then how would these be demolished? I mean, I got the impression as somebody would move out, you would demolish. How would you demolish this? Could you do it like one place at a time? Do you have to do like a section at a time? How does that usually work?
If the board chooses to demolish the units, my recommendation would be at that time that we pick a section of the Willowbrook complex, start there, demolish, build up, move residents back in, and then start with the next section in order to not dislocate as many. That would allow us not to dislocate as many residents.
So if I was to demolish a section, how many units would that be? How many units are in a section?
4.
So those 4 families would move out for how long and where would they go?
We would be paying for relocation expenses and we would be working with them on trying to find them a new place to live.
So we have, I may be getting more into the details. So we make a decision that Section A we're going to demolish, and those 4 families or those 4 units, the people in them, we're going to try to find a place for them. Would they be guaranteed to find a place once we move them out? Are we going to make sure that they have a place to go to? And then what if we don't find those places for them to go right away? Does that then delay the renovation or the demolition and the rebuilding?
Yes, we cannot move them out without a place for them to go.
Okay, so we wouldn't be taking people out.
No, definitely not.
And then, okay, yeah, those were the, then finally, the 50 SVC, I understand what the RAD is, but I don't understand the SVC.
SVC stands for Streamlined Voluntary Conversion. That would be the 50 Section 8 vouchers.
Say that again?
That would be the 50 Section 8 vouchers. So in scenario 2, 40 RAD units, RAD means demolition. Okay, that means when you see RAD, that means we're looking to demolish.
Okay.
50 means we're just looking to convert public housing to the Section 8 platform.
Okay,
And again, it's just a scenario.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Martinez, do you have any questions?
Yeah, how many, I don't know if you guys answered this. I know each section was 4 homes in the Willowbrook area. How many would be built in that section after it'd be demolished?
Again, no, we do not have any preliminary plans. That is all something that will have to come back to the board for approval.
Okay. And you also don't have an idea of, you know, how big those homes would be in terms of square footage? Like, are they going to be about the same square footage, or are they going to be more?
No, we're barely in the preliminary stages. We don't have any of that information.
So do you have, like, I know you might not, but like maybe an estimated time of when all of this would be completed if everything just moves along smoothly?
If everything, we will be coming back to the board to request your authorization to move forward with our staff recommendation, whatever that may be. As of right now, there is no staff recommendation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Gabby Basua.
Thank you, Member Martinez. Member Perez, do you have any questions?
I do not. Several of them have already been asked and answered. Thank you. Thank you, Gabby, for your presentation.
Thank you. Johnny Brown, do you have any questions? You're muted, sir. Mr. Brown, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
First of all, good evening, everyone. And I haven't met some of the new members, so glad to meet you anyway. But I have a couple of questions for Gabby. Okay. I heard you say that, Gabby, that not much can be done at Mar Vista except for renovations, which I understand, and I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm interested in Mar Vista more because I live here. But anyway, you said something about the windows again, and I just wanted to clarify. You did say at that meeting that you are going to proceed with putting in the windows, right?
That is correct. That is correct. We are moving forward. An RFP is scheduled to go out by the end of this week. And we are done with.
Okay, one more question that people had, and I didn't understand what, because I wasn't able to attend the meeting. I had a doctor appointment. But anyway, they were talking about, oh man, I lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry. Okay, so first of all, I want to tell you thank you for going and following through with the windows. And we've been waiting for like 3 or 4 years now, and finally it seems like they're going to come in. So thank you. And I had something else. Oh yeah, I remember now. Some people said something about switching to flat rate. Like when I looked at it, it looked like flat rate. We had to pay more. So why would someone want to go to flat rate when we're on public housing or Section 8? That's my question.
We lose.
Board members, I just got a text from Ms. Basua saying that she's having technical difficulties. Stand by for just one moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You know, one of the things that in my mind that I'm trying to come to grips with is what is the mission of our housing authority? Is our mission to provide affordable housing for those who need it in the highest numbers possible? And when I look at Willowbrook, it looks like a really nice public housing area. So I'm wondering when we get back with Ms. Basua, like, could we delay demolitions? I mean, would these alternatives be available to us down the road? Because we're coming out of COVID, and I just think displacing people who are relying on our public housing when we have a public housing shortage, it's nice to be able to refurbish and tear down and rebuild, but are we meeting the goals of our public housing department? So that's something that I'm thinking about is like, we're under pressure to come up with more affordable housing. We have affordable housing, and it appears Willowbrook is very well maintained, although I haven't been on the inside, so maybe it's, in total need. I also remember when we approved the demolition and reconstruction that was like the only alternative we had at the time, and I think we were pretty excited about it, but now it seems like we have other alternatives. So hopefully staff is listening to this while we're waiting for the return of Ms. Pasua. And if anyone else has any general comments, but I've always been intrigued as to what's the mission and what's the goals of our public housing department. If anybody has anything to add, that would be great. City Manager Connors, do you have any input that we could divulge?
I can address at least the mission requirement, and the basic package is really affordable, decent housing for those that are in terms of housing availability and the ability to sustain housing. I would also say that we talked about the kind of turnover rate in some of these homes. We have a backlist, a waiting list that is extensive, and it has to get renewed every 2 or 3 months. So I'm not really concerned about the ability to build houses, especially if there's modifications or improvements to them. There is pressure from the housing authority to make a commitment into one of these 3 programs to convert what we currently do. We push it off a little bit, mainly in terms of leadership turnover and then COVID. A lot of the things that we need to do in preparation for conversion were not available to us or had to be delayed for whatever those purposes. So the pressure is building every day from the housing perspective, although we do have a period of time, but the housing authority is the one that's putting pressure on these conversions. So it goes back to what you said initially, Mayor. What are our trade-offs, right? The trade-offs are newer or improved houses, or a net operating income, or a hybrid of those couple things. And so what staff really wants to do is put some deeper analysis into the final elements of each one of those programs with our consultant, and then come back to council and provide a detailed recommendation with the trade-offs associated with each one of those items that you have identified correctly. And I think
just Ms. Pasua joined us.
And I apologize, my computer shut off.
Thank you for quickly resolving that issue, because we were running out of things to talk about.
Can I continue with my question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm glad you're back, Gabby. My question was, again, I heard talk about that you talked about that meeting that some people would be able to convert to flat rate. Why would someone want to convert to flat rate? It seems like they'd be paying more rent than we are paying now.
That's right, Johnny. So what I was talking about when I spoke to everybody at the meeting is we do have some residents at Willowbrook, none at Mar Vista, that have that higher income. But in order to keep these at a low income rate, we must give them the option to do a flat rent amount. Yeah, so that's what we were talking about at Mar Vista. But like I told the Mar Vista residents, that has never happened at Mar Vista. So it's mostly happening at the family complex.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I got one more question. when you're gonna renovate, well, according to plan, you're gonna renovate as someone moves out, and then you're gonna renovate that unit and then bring somebody new in. I get that part. Okay, now my question is, our hallway carpet is horrible. And I was wondering if someday they can change the carpet, put new flooring in our carpet. I mean, we got big old giant oil or some kind of grease stains all over the carpet, and they smell real bad. So I was gonna ask if can they change the carpet in our the second floor is the worst.
Yeah, actually, Johnny, we're on it. We've already got the 3 estimates for that.
Okay.
And we will be changing the carpet out.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that. Okay, and let me see. Well, you answered all my questions, so thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Johnny.
I have a follow-up question regarding carpeting. Has any consideration been given to possibly not going with carpeting and going with some kind of flooring, hardwood or tile flooring? It's my understanding that carpeting brings with it more problems than a regular hard floor.
Yes, we can definitely look into that option. When we were looking at replacing the carpet there a few months during COVID, that did come up, but we can definitely look at getting quotes for that.
Yeah, I think carpeting holds on to germs and stuff more so than others. And of course, as we all know, it's kind of hard to clean, but that's just my 2 cents. Any other questions regarding the presentation? Okay.
Member Hernandez and Member or Vice Chair Rollins have.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing you. Okay.
Laura, go first.
Thank you very much. Ms. Basua, I wanted to go back to the demolition costs and ask if we choose to go to do the demo of Willowbrook, wouldn't the cost have a bearing on our decision? Where would the money come to do the demo?
Yeah.
And where would the money come from? So
yes, we will be bringing this all back to you for your approval. We'll be bringing in what we feel we should do. But just to give you a little bit of an example, if we choose to go RAD, what HUD does is they basically release the lien on the property and allow us to go out for loans. So we would have to take out a loan on the property, pay for the construction, and then go in and then do like a 30-year mortgage. And when you saw the net operating surplus, that's what we would use to pay those loans off.
Okay. So you expect you'll have those costs then when you come back before the board?
Correct.
Okay.
We will have at least an estimate for you on what we think what the cost is going to be.
Okay. And then the construction costs?
That will also be
separate.
taken in. Yes. All those numbers will be given to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
While you're away, Gabby, I had a question as to the mission of the Housing Authority and how it is that we go to make that decision regarding whether to demolish or status quo. And then the other part of it was, if we delay the demolition and reconstruction of those units, would these other alternatives still be available to the Housing Authority 2-3 years down the road?
So in regards to your first question, in regards to the mission, obviously the Housing Authority shares the mission of that of HUD, and it's to provide low-income housing that is safe and sanitary to the community. We can add, we can expand to whatever you feel our mission should be. If you think it should be broader, we can definitely do that. The board has all the authority to do that. I'm sorry, your second question was?
So if it's determined that Willowbrook is safe and sanitary and the demolition can be delayed for several years, well, whatever amount of time, until such time that the buildings become unsafe or unsanitary, I mean, what is the driving force behind demolishing and rebuilding? So that's my question.
Yes. Okay. So in regards to the demolition, once the need assessments come back, and obviously the goal here is to get market rates for these units. So if the need assessment comes back and they're saying, you know what, we can't wait with the demolition, then we will bring that to the board. But if it comes back and says, these units have a good 5-7 years, then at that time you can decide as a board, you know what, we're not going to demolish, but staff, be ready to bring back these options within the near future.
Okay, and as it stands now, well, in 2019, we didn't have 3 alternatives to choose from. We just had the alternative, hey, we could participate in RAD, and that was the recommendation to tear down and rebuild the units to make them not necessarily bigger or not make more units, but to give them a new lifespan. Is that accurate?
That is correct. At that time, we only had one option, and it was RAD. Since then, HUD has come out with 2 additional programs.
Okay. And has anyone determined that any of the Willowbrook units are unsafe and unsanitary?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm going to scroll my bar, make sure I can see everybody.
How old are the Willowbrook units?
The Willowbrook units were built in the 1950s, I believe. Mar Vista, 1964, 74.
Wow.
And have they been renovated? I'm assuming since the 50s have been renovated.
Yes, they definitely have been renovated numerous times.
Okay.
And I would say they've been maintained very well. Both buildings, I'm surprised that they're that old because both areas look very well from the outside and even on the inside from what I've seen. Okay, last chance for one more question. Anybody? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the consent calendar. And item number 2 on the consent calendar is minutes of the Housing Authority regular meeting of November 16th, 2020. That was our last meeting? Wow, a while ago. Also, the finance cash disbursements for November 16th, 2020 through April 20th, 2021. At this time, I would like to have a motion to approve the consent calendar. I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. Can we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Chair Gama,
Yes.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Martinez,
Yes.
Member Perez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Just a point of order, Member Martinez and Perez were not here at that last meeting, so they should really abstain from the vote, shouldn't they not?
They could potentially abstain if they did not watch that particular meeting or have no recollection or record of having viewed that meeting.
Okay.
I
Then I
guess
will
I'd like
change
to
my-
abstain.
Same.
Okay, so Member Perez and Martinez has now changed their vote to abstain.
Thank you, sir. I have that for the record.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are now moving on to the public hearing for the Housing Authority. Item number 4, Housing Authority 2020 5-year annual plan and updated program policies. The hearing is now open at 6:48 p.m. Do any members of the board have any conflicts to disclose?
No.
Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Do we have a complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes, we do.
Will staff please present the report?
Thank you, Commissioner. This is the final item here before you tonight, and that item is a staff recommendation to adopt a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving the 2020 5-year plan and updated policies. All public housing authorities are required to review, update, and amend their plans and policies annually and hold a public hearing on the plan after a 45-day comment period has elapsed. There are no major changes to this year's administrative plan or admission and continued occupancy policy. The submission of this plan is the basis by which the Housing Authority receives its federal subsidies from HUD. These subsidies help fund the public housing program along with the Housing Choice Voucher Program. In your package, you will find a lot of attachments. The main thing here is that we included as part of the goal to go ahead and do something in public housing as far as restructuring, either through the mainstream, the RAD, all the attachments that you see in your package is just the HUD guidebook that must be attached to the 5-year plan. So basically, we are saying that, yes, we understand that HUD has rules and regulations, and we are ready to implement those as soon as the board makes a decision on what it's going to do with its public housing. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Okay, does any member have any questions for Housing Authority Manager Gabby Basua? Okay, having seen no questions, I'm going to move on to any public comments related to this item. Have we received any public comments related to this annual report?
No, sir.
Thank you. Does staff have any further comments? Member Hernandez has a question.
Just curious as to why section of the agreement here or the report is blacked out.
Because that does not apply to our housing authority. It is for larger housing authorities. So we've gone ahead and blacked that out to recognize to HUD that those sections of their guidance do not apply to the housing authority.
Okay, thank you.
Does staff have any further comments? Do any of the members have any further questions? If there is no further discussion, we'll close the public hearing, the time being 6:51 p.m. We have before us a recommendation to approve the Housing Authority 2020 5-year annual plan and updated program policies. Madam Clerk, it says here that I am to read the exact resolution ordinance titles.
If you'll just read the recommendation, I believe it just it's okay. Just titled the Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority approving the 2020 annual plan.
Okay, so I'm going to read the recommendation. Adopt a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the City of Port Hueneme, California, approving the fiscal year FY 2020 annual plan. May I have a motion to approve the plan?
Move to approve.
And I'll second that. Madam Clerk, can you please take a roll call vote?
Vice Chair Rollins,
Yes.
Chair Gama,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Martinez,
Yes.
Member Perez.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, there are no business items for the Housing Authority tonight. So that takes us to the second to the last item on our agenda. Authority members, reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. Member Martinez, would you like to go first?
I don't have any comments, Mayor Gama.
Thank you, sir. Member Perez, do you have any comments, reports, requests for future agenda items?
I do not. Thank you.
Member Hernandez.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Member Rollins.
Nothing.
I would just like to say, I think our public housing department does a wonderful job. As stated earlier, our units look good from the outside. And I know that it's difficult at times to move projects forward, but we do see that progress is being made. And for that, I think we're all very grateful. And I'm really grateful to the fact that that we have a very well participated public housing department. And for that, Gabby, we thank you very much for being a wonderful manager of the Housing Authority.
Real quick, Mayor Gama.
Yes, sir.
Remember there was one of the individuals that was living right here at Mar Vista, George, who's trying to get something going. Did that get cleared up?
I believe so. I think you're talking about the resident council. And Gabby, could you give us an update on that, perhaps?
Can I make a comment, Kevin, on that?
I would prefer not to. It's not been agendized, so the public has not been invited to speak on that matter or submit public comment.
What I will do is I will send you a executive summary on that.
Okay, and perhaps we could have it as a future agenda item at our next housing meeting, just to give us an update.
Okay.
All right, having no further questions, I would like to adjourn this meeting. The time now is 6:55 p.m. Next meeting of the Housing Authority will be the regular meeting of June 7th, 2021, to be broadcast at 6:30 p.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers, hopefully. With that, wish everybody a good evening, and thank you for participating in this important meeting.
Good evening.